Good afternoon, everybody. Obviously, being the last person here on a hot Friday afternoon, I will try and be as brief as I can, given obviously the fabulous contributions so far. Anyway, shining a light on Ireland and Brexit is the question, and I'm minded to observe that Whitehall is so far guilty of a 40-watt approach to Brexit. I mean, Ireland once again is collateral damage in failed British policy and Westminster game playing, as I think we can see. 15 months on from Theresa May's Lancaster House speech, where she outlined her Brexit strategy, if I can call it that, she promised to deliver, quote, a practical solution to the border as soon as we can. You will, of course, note that we are still waiting 15 months later. Hemmed in with no parliamentary majority, an impossible task in delivering the mechanics of Brexit, and reliant on the tender mercies of the Democratic Unionists, it's an unenviable challenge, I think, for any Prime Minister. But the confusion over the border and the risks it poses, as we've heard this afternoon, to the Good Friday Agreement settlement is not acceptable. Whitehall's assumptions throughout this process have proven wrong all the way through. Briefly, I think these are that the border is not a biggie. We'll sort that out. It's easy to fix. It's in the easy to resolve tray. We've got all these complex trade things to deal with later on. We'll sort that. That's not a problem. Then I think when they've realised actually it is pretty complex and it is a big problem. Of course, David Davis, the Brexit secretary, blames Sinn Féin because apparently they're twisting Leo Varadkar's arm up his back, and it's all their fault. But of course, it comes back as well to the blind faith of Brexiteers in technological solutions to the border, which of course Michel Barnier, in possibly the greatest put down in political history, described as magical thinking. Simon Coveney, the Irish Foreign Minister, of course, has been clear for months and clear again the other day that no infrastructure on the Irish border is acceptable. Is Whitehall listening? No, not really. We have the biggest assumption, I think, is that simply Ireland will back down, and that the Commission will want to deal with the UK far more than it's interested in defending Ireland's position. Well, I think that is a highly optimistic scenario at the moment, as I think we can see. But it comes, I think, from a product of a mindset, a political mindset that has little regard for complexity. Brexit is fiendishly complicated. But for the abstract romanticism of Brexiteers, with their kind of wrong and dangerous and disregarding assumptions, we're in that situation where hard reality and people driving the bus are with their heads in the clouds, to mix my metaphors horribly, do not blend together terribly well. So where are we currently? Mired in confusion, clearly, about whether a customs partnership or max FAC, which of course sounds like a sort of mid-range make-up, is the preferred solution of the Irish government to the border issue, but with an agreement to abide by a backstop solution. So whether we're seeing deliberate political choreography to try and push out two unworkable solutions in the hope that Theresa May can then move towards the backstop, that's possibly, I guess, where we are, which of course guarantees alignment between both jurisdictions on the island of Ireland, which the DUP won't like a lot, but I suspect won't like Jeremy Corbyn even more in Downing Street. We're on the cusp, I guess, otherwise, of the real risk of a failed deal, a hard Brexit, the hard cliff edge, economic calamity. But for me, one of the curious byproducts of the kind of tough talk of Brexiteers is the fillip that this has had to the debate around Irish reunification, which I've written a book about precipitously a couple of years ago, and I've written a book about it, and then, of course, assuming Brexit wouldn't happen, and like everybody else, have to go back very quickly and hurriedly and insert Brexit into it. I think it's, as I say, a very curious byproduct that the integrity of the United Kingdom, not just Northern Ireland, but I think Scotland as well. There's a fillip there as well for Scottish nationalism. That the product of leaving the European Union for hardline Brexiteers is that the UK itself may disintegrate. Of course, the obvious effects for Northern Ireland is a loss of EU funding, circa €600 a year, no access to the single market, a massive competitive disadvantage which already exists vis-a-vis investment with the Irish Republic. That can only get worse. They stopped filming Game of Thrones in Northern Ireland, I think, next year, and I think the sandwich van outside where they film it probably constitutes a big chunk of Northern Ireland's GVA already in terms of the private sector. It's going to end up withering on the vine, I think, very, very quickly. Brexit is an accelerant, I think, poured over the dry tinder of economic, demographic and electoral factors that are already, I think, perfectly evident about Irish reunification. But it's going to be strange that Jacob Rees-Mogg may be the midwife to a united Ireland. Where will we get to in the next few months? Special status, regulatory alignment. We've got all these euphemisms creeping into British politics for effectively Northern Ireland remaining inside at least the customs union. And again, the symbolism of that, I think, is incredibly potent. Northern Ireland is effectively then, I think, placed in an antechamber with the only door opening out eventually in the next few years into a united Ireland, part of the UK for now, but only just. If I can, I'll just finish with a couple of just thoughts more broadly about Brexit. I stand here among you as an instinctive pro-European, but also one, I think, that may challenge perhaps some of your assumptions as well. Everybody I know in the political bubble was obviously horrified that Brexit happened and didn't believe it ever would. Everybody I know in the real world voted for Brexit. I come from Bolton, I live in Sheffield now. People I know, Labour voters I know, all voted Brexit, and if there was a second referendum, would vote for Brexit again. So I think for pro-Europeans, there is a moment where we need to reflect about what happened. We need to ask some hard questions about why the case for Europe has never been popularised effectively in British politics. Although there's been massive shared assumptions at the political elites level, it's never percolated down, I think, effectively. And it's more than just front pages in the Sun about bendy bananas. There's something much more fundamental, I think, than that. So I think we need to reflect. I think we need to regroup. And if Brexit does go ahead, and I don't understand myself the choreography of why it won't, I think we need to marshal the forces of people that are still committed to this view of the world, perhaps behind a bid to reapply to rejoin the European Union as soon as possible, but certainly I think by the mid-2020s, when I think the full horrors of Brexit will be abundantly apparent. And it just struck me the other day, just in terms of a slightly abstract timeline, that when Harold Macmillan tried to join back in 1962 and was obviously vetoed by de Gaulle, within a decade we'd gone through Harold Wilson, the white heat of technology, huge effort to try and put Britain's economy on a different track through technology. That succeeded in part, but not brilliantly. And of course, by 1972, we'd coalesced again around the importance of joining the European Economic Community, and of course we did. So 10 years from failure through another model to actually rejoining, it strikes me that might be a parallel for where we are today, that we've voted narrowly to leave. The Brexiteer vision of a sovereign Britain bestriding the world with trade deals instead of bobbing like a cork on the sea will, I think, be found out very, very quickly. And I think that provides a moment to re-energise the movement for popularising Europe as a cause. And I think that's what we need to do, and to focus on popularising it. And events like this, I think, are the seed corn from which that will hopefully bear fruit. Thank you.